Last topic for today before I answer a few questions. The NFLPA executive director vote. We came back and did a special little addendum to Wednesday's PFTPM after it was known that Lloyd Howell, a person I had never heard of, and most people in the NFL ecosystem had never heard of before he was announced as a new NFLPA executive director. When that came out, we did a little on that. On Wednesday, there was a press conference with members of the media asking questions, both of Howell and of Union President J.C. Tretter. And I continue to have some questions about the process. And I understand it's not my business directly, but it's my business indirectly because, as I've said before, it's important for any of the stakeholders in the game of professional football to care about the balance that exists or doesn't exist between management and labor. If it gets too far out of balance, it sets the stage for a work stoppage, and we don't want a work stoppage. We want that thing that we cover to continue to exist. I remember during the pandemic when we were trying to understand and explain the rules and offer opinions on what should or shouldn't be the rules. People were like, oh, you don't want there to be a season. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Einstein. I don't want there to be a football season when my only business is to cover football. I don't want them to play games. No, I don't want that. I want the games to be played. I don't want work stoppages. I don't want any stoppages. I want every game to be played. I want to be able to cover the sport of football. So I have an interest in making sure that the union has the best possible executive director who can go toe-to-toe with the commissioner and the owners. And Lloyd Howell could be it. But the problem is the union leadership so excessively prioritized confidentiality that I think they threw their process out of balance. And as best I could understand J.C. Tretter's comments from the press conference, they didn't want undue external influence over the process. They didn't want media outlets endorsing candidates. They didn't want guys like me chiming in on why you should like this guy or not like this guy, or these are the questions you should ask if you're a player rapper. These are the concerns you should be interested in. They didn't want that. They wanted to do it themselves. The problem in limiting undue external influence, they minimized internal influence. And specifically, they consolidated that influence to the executive committee, multiple members of which are retired players. One of the things Tretter expressed multiple times during the press conference, this was a decision by players. I don't know whether he said by players, for players, but that was the message. This is a player-led union. The executive committee picked the candidates, vetted the candidates, created the list of finalists, dropped it into the laps of the board of player representatives earlier this week. They changed the Constitution so that the player representatives didn't have the names at least 30 days before the meeting. They did that last year. They set this up. They knew what they were going to do. We're going to create an ultra-secret process where no one knows. Here's our goal. Here's our goal. And look, I think in very linear fashion. I think football players are very linear. Here's our goal. We got to go. Confidentiality equals good. So we're going to do everything we can to get as much confidentiality as possible. So let's create a system where no one knows who the finalists will be until the very last minute. Yeah, that'll keep those jerks in the media from trying to butt in our affairs. That's fine. That's fine. But what it also does, it creates a system where your board of player reps show up and they don't know who the hell these people are. And see, Tretter was asked that question. And he said, well, it's not for them to vet. It's for the executive committee to vet. That's fine. But if you're going to say this is a player-run process, you got to get all the retired players off the executive committee. And you definitely got to remove from the executive committee, I don't know, any players that may currently work for the NFL or currently work for Amazon. Those guys shouldn't be involved in vetting the candidates and whittling down the list to a couple of finalists who just get dropped into the laps of the board of player representatives. See, there's a lot of problems here. And there aren't many of us in the media who care about it. I do, because something stinks to me about all of it. The process creates suspicion. That's the other flaw in this thinking. They were so obsessed with confidentiality. They didn't think that to the outside, and Tretter tried to dismiss it as, well, we know you guys need some stories to write in the slow time. So you would have liked to have had, the fans don't give a shit, JC. 99% of my readers don't care about this. News of who the executive director finalists were going to be was not going to move the needle at PFT, and guarantee that. And the stories I've been writing this week are not moving the needle, but I think it's the right thing to do to make sure the players understand what's happening and to ensure that the proper balance exists between labor and management. So a question I posed recently, now that someone knows who the finalists were, the board of player reps know, the confidentiality supposedly expired when they showed up and got the names, are the other players who were kept in the dark? The rank and file was kept in the dark. They used their apathy against them, because that's the problem with the NFLPA. The rank and file don't care. So when the rank and file don't care, you can create a system where, and I don't know how they arrived at Lloyd Howell. I don't know who the other finalists were. I don't know how many there were. I don't know anything about the process, but neither do the members of the union. Now that the dust has settled, will their curiosity result in them contacting their representatives, the men they've elected, and say, who else was up for that? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Like, I know we picked Lloyd Howell, and this is a guy with no union background. He was in corporate America for 34 years. He's on the board of GE Healthcare, which has some pretty close ties to the NFL. This Booz Allen Hamilton firm did some work for the NFL teams, some of the teams back in the first decade of this century. We just want to know who else was in the running. Just curious. I'm just curious. I'm curious about it. Is there curiosity among the players? See, union leadership banked on the fact that there isn't. There wasn't enough curiosity ahead of time. The board of player representatives, for whatever reason, last year, and I'd love to know more about the amendment that changed the Constitution to ensure extreme secrecy. I've asked the union for it multiple times. They have not told me yet, yes or no, whether or not I'm going to get it. I'd love to see the amendment or other amendments, because the statement from the union says that they followed the Constitution and all relevant board amendments. There was an S on the end of it. What other amendments were there? So, again, most of you don't care. I'm trying to explain why you should care, and definitely why players out there who have allowed the union to be co-opted by the fact that the players don't care. And if the players cared a little bit more, or at all, this wouldn't have happened. This secret process that resulted in the election of Lloyd Howell would not have occurred. People would have known and had an opportunity to chime in and explore the qualifications in the background and ask the tough questions. Is this something we really want? Someone with ties to GE Healthcare, given GE Healthcare's ties to the NFL, does that help us? Does it hurt us? Do we want someone who worked at a consulting firm that did work for the NFL teams? Does that help us or does it hurt us? Does it help us understand the way the NFL thinks when it's time to negotiate the next CBA, or does it hurt us? And, here's the other reality. It's 2023. The current CBA lasts until the end of the decade and into the next decade. I don't even know how old Lloyd Howell is. He worked at Booz Allen Hamilton for 34 years. He's got an engineering degree from Penn and an MBA from Harvard. So, again, unless we're dealing with a Doogie Howser situation, he's probably my age, if not older. Let's say he got his MBA at 23. You add 34 to that, he's my age. And I'd like to think that I'll still be doing what I'm doing early into the next decade, but I don't know. And again, hey, look, this is not an ageist thing. I think people over the age of 40, over the age of 50, over the age of 60, over the age of 70, over the age of 80 can contribute much. My question is, how long does Lloyd Howell really intend to be there? What kind of a contract is he going to get? Is he a bridge to the executive director they'll hire in advance of the next CBA? Is this just a peacetime executive director, knowing that they're going to ramp up later with somebody who will be prepared for the next CBA negotiations? I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm curious about. And again, most of you don't care, but I'm trying to give you reason to care, because this CBA will be over before we know it, and we'll be hopefully not covering another work stoppage, or I need to answer some questions. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.